Hey all, and welcome to War Games on Toast. This is the inaugural episode of the quote-unquote show. And well, I'm here to do one thing and one thing only, and that is to natter your lugs off about the wide and wonderful world of Warcry. Before we get started, I just need to get a bit of bookkeeping out of the way so you all know what to expect. My competitive days of wargaming are long behind me, so if you're looking for a super competitive breakdown or list, then for now, I would recommend going somewhere else. However, if you want a detailed analysis and walkthrough of how to play the game and what units are good, and some awesome banter about everything Warcry, then you are absolutely in the right place. With all of that out of the way, drop a like, hit the subscribe button, and if you're feeling extra spicy, consider throwing a comment and starting a bit of a chinwag. The void is a lonely place, and I'm always down to stave it off with some Warcry chatter. Without further ado, let's get into the first faction I want to talk about, and one that is near and dear with a double E, to my heart, the Beasts of Chaos. So, who are the Beasts of Chaos? Well, they are the true children of Chaos. Demons are manifestations of their gods, emotions brought to bear in physical form, whereas mortals are enslaved and bound to the will of a greater power. But the beasts... well, the beasts are the culmination of nature recoiling at the presence of something unnatural, warping and deforming to create creatures as unfathomably grotesque as they are violent. The beasts of chaos are a force of nature unto themselves. Where civilization grows, the beasts of chaos look to desecrate. Where life blooms, they seek to defoul. The great beasts kneel to none. For none, not even the gods, deserve reverence, worship, or respect. Live or dead, flesh, stone, or bark, friend or foe, the beasts of chaos's great herds will trample it underfoot and under hoof. If any of that sounds awesome, then the beasts of chaos are the faction for you. Before I go into the specifics of the beasts and break down each unit, let's go over their pros, cons, strengths, and weaknesses as a faction. So first things first, let's start with the pros. They have cheap chaff. The Beasts of Chaos have some of the cheapest units in all of Warcry, allowing them to flood the board with a tide of horn and blade. They also have access to monsters. To complement their expendable chaff is a mountain of monsters waiting to answer their call. From the mighty Gorgon to the destructive Chimera, the Beasts of Chaos can call upon many powerful fiends to tear their foes asunder. This also comes with range. Chaos is not typically known for their ranged abilities, but Beasts of Chaos book that trend well and truly. Whilst a smidge more expensive than their dedicated chaff, archers can join the ranks of your herd, not to mention the fearsome Sentrygor, a living catapult capable of launching boulders with enough force to fell even the mightiest of warriors. And finally, speed. Every unit in the Beasts of Chaos is fast. Every single one. Their basic units move a minimum of 5 inches per AP, but it goes even higher once you factor in abilities and even more elite units. The Beasts of Chaos can be very oppressive when needed as a result. Every pro comes with a con, and the Beasts of Chaos is no exception. One of the biggest downsides to the Beasts is their low strength. No basic troop is going to hit harder than strength 3, and when they land their hits, they are not going to do that much damage. A lot of their damage comes from incredibly expensive units, and even then you are mostly looking at strength 4, which leaves a lot to be desired against some of the tougher enemies you'll face in Warcry. Not only that, they have very expensive elite units. We've just mentioned it, but it's worth reiterating. Whilst the Beasts of Chaos have cheap chaff, their competent fighters are very expensive, often costing more than the heroes of other factions. Not only that, but beast heroes can also get very pricey, sometimes getting very close to taking up an entire 1/3 of your total points allowance. Finally, low durability. Whilst this is not true faction-wide, and honestly it's not true when you consider reactions, but beastmen, especially on the cheaper end of their spectrum, are very squishy without support. Basic troops are rocking at most 10 HP, dropping as low as 8. And their more elite infantry isn't actually pulling that much better, capping out at about 12. To Toughness 4 is the standard for the faction, although this does often require shields, which means most enemies, especially their harder hitting foes, can actually hit you fairly reliably, and there isn't much you can do about it. The more elite you get, however, the more HP you pack, but despite the monstrous and titanic health pools, they are still lacking toughness, and you are paying a hefty premium just to bring them. All in all, the Beasts of Chaos are fast, versatile, and have access to some interesting models, but the trade-off is a huge points tag the deeper you go, low-ish strength, and a rather middling toughness. It's an interesting mix of traits, but traits you can definitely build a lot of warbands around. So we've put this off long enough, it's time to go into the full-on unit breakdown. For this, I am specifically going to look at the models in the Beasts of Chaos list that are unique to them. As a general rule, I won't be covering generic allies, monsters or thralls. Those breakdowns will come in a later video. There are some exceptions here though. Kicking things off, we have heroes and, well, the Great Bray Shaman. The Great Bray Shaman is one of the better heroes you can take. Its durability is on par with characters who are far more expensive, with toughness 4 and 20 wounds, and of course he packs the typical movement 5 the beastmen love to have. His offensive stats are where things take a little bit of a dip. His staff is nothing more than a glorified spear, although he does get 3 attacks. His offensive power mostly comes from his range attack. Whilst only getting 2 shots of strength 3, it does actually deal 3 to 6 damage, which means it can spike quite hard if you get lucky. His true strength comes from his unique ability, Devolve, which lets you control your opponent's models. He rolls in at about 145 points, and honestly that is well worth the cost for just the Devolve ability by itself, as this ability can only be found on vastly more expensive monsters such as the Vortex Beast or the Mind Spheranx, who are 2 to 3 times more expensive. So he's a pretty good steal for the ability alone. Next up is the Beast Lord, and this chap is quite the beatstick. Packing 2 extra wounds over the Shaman, the Beast Lord is fairly tough. Heck, he's even bulkier than many comparably priced Chaos heroes. He then backs us up with a whopping 5 attacks of 2 to 4 damage. His weakness, however, is his 1-inch reach and his piddly strength 4. This makes him very useful for clearing weaker infantry, which also ties into his unique ability, Grisly Trophies, which buffs nearby allies. The Beast Lord is a fantastic force multiplier, but you only really take him for his buffing potential, and that can be shut down against tougher opponents like the Stormcast Eternals. Now we get onto the true murder machines of the Beasts of Chaos. The Doom Bull is a whopping 100 points more than the Beast Lord, but gains buckets of advantages. Firstly, he retains movement 5, which makes him one of the faster on-foot units in the game, and his wounds increase by a whole 16 points, going to 38 total wounds. He does lose 1 attack, but his strength skyrockets to 5, and his damage is boosted from 2 to 4 to 3 to 8. The Doom Bull is absolutely monstrous in combat and can kill anything from heroes to elite infantry to monsters to hordes of chaff effortlessly. If you check out fellow content creator Optimal Playstate, links in the description, he recently did an excellent math hammer breakdown of every single Chaos hero in the game, and the Doom Bull actually ranks highly in just about every single category, being one of the fastest, strongest, and most durable characters any Chaos faction can take, which makes him excellent in Beasts of Chaos. And that's before you factor in his unique ability, Blood Gorge, which allows him to heal. He is truly, truly amazing. Now, you might think nothing can compare to the Doom Bull, but there is one character we can take that gives the Doom Bull a run for its money, and that is the Dragon Ogre Shaggoth. The Shaggoth rocks up with toughness 4 and 35 wounds, so very comparable to the Big Bull himself. He also has 3 attacks at strength 5, dealing 3 to 6 damage, which is also very respectable, even if it is lower than the Doom Bull. The kicker, the Shaggoth is movement 6 and has a 2-inch reach on his axe. This is very nice and allows the Shaggoth to apply more pressure to more of the board more effectively. Not only that, there are 2 Dragon Ogre abilities it has access to, granting you powerful 20-inch range attack and an AoE heal for every other Dragon Ogre, including itself. He's also 20 points cheaper. In the right list, the Shaggoth is absolutely amazing and definitely holds his weight against the Titanic Doombull. Now we have the big hitters of the hero list out the way. We now move on to some of the cheaper heroes in the faction, starting with the Full Render. I actually love this guy. He's very cheap at only 140 points. He gets a wonderful number of attacks and shares the same damage profile as the Beast Lord. The only downside is that he only has 15 wounds and doesn't gain access to Grizzly trophies, so he isn't really much of a support centerpiece. But for a cheap beta, this guy does do work. He does compete with the Shaman, however, who is only 5 points more. Another very cheap hero, the Half-Horn, is less than 100 points, comes with toughness 4 and 12 wounds. His attacks aren't that bad either, sharing the same damage profile as the Full Render and the aforementioned Beast Lord, but he does come with only strength 3 and with even less attacks. As a result, it's not likely he'll actually stand up in a fight. If you want a super cheap hero to lead a warband, however, then you can't get cheaper than the Half-Horn. For 25 points more, you can upgrade your Half-Horn to a Raider Half-Horn. This one is a tricky one because the range attack it gains is pretty damn weak, and it's only really used for chipping away at things. However, he does gain the Ungor Raider unique ability to increase his shots, and his melee profile is identical to the Half-Horn, so he can fight in close combat and he can do it pretty well. And honestly, if you have the spare points, it's a fair upgrade. Now, if you want to take a hero who was stronger than the Full Render, but cheaper than the Beast Lord, then the Gouge-horn is your goat. Gaining an extra wound and a higher critical damage, the Gouge-horn is quite a threat in combat. They are reasonably priced, that makes them a decent inclusion. They also have the Bestigors ability to deal damage when charging into enemies, which further increases his combat ability. Overall, not a bad option at all if you have the spare points lying around. So now we're going to move on to some slightly more interesting heroes in the form of the Bloodkine. The Bloodkine are basically cheaper Doombulls. They have less HP and fewer attacks, however they do gain more options. Bloodkine can take 2 axes, a great axe, or a single axe and a shield. The kicker being, all of them are actually useful, as the base damage for a Bloodkine is actually really good at 2-5. We would recommend running either the great axe or the axe and shield, however. The great axe gives the Bloodkine the same profile as a Doombull, 3-8 with just 1 less attack, whilst the shield bumps the toughness to a whopping 5, which makes him far more survivable. Don't forget that Bloodkine also have access to Blood Gorge, letting them heal when they kill an enemy, making them very hard to shift. The Doombull is a clear winner overall, due to his higher stats in general, but Bloodkine are an excellent alternative if you need to save some points. And the final hero on our list is the Gohoof. Gohoofs are the only heroes I would recommend you stay away from. They are more expensive than the Beast Lord and have less attacks. Now they do gain 2-inch reach and 10-inch movement, but being mounted simply means they can't navigate the board as well as basic infantry. They also have no dedicated abilities, which hurts them even more. They're not bad, but for the points they just don't do enough. And now we move on to fighters, and we start with the humble Gor. Gor are in a strange spot because they are very close to Ungor in both stats and cost. They often act like a side grade. Of the 2 variants, Gor with shields are preferred as the toughness 4 is far too good to pass up, and having 10 wounds and access to brute resilience, more on that in a bit, they can pin down much stronger enemies without much hassle. Ungor are very much like Gor, only they lose 2 wounds. 8 wounds is very squishy, but Ungor all come with shields, and since the spear variant has a 2-inch reach, they can stay pretty safe. Brute resilience also lets them tank effectively, although noticeably less than Gor. In general, an Ungor will die 1 to 2 hits sooner than a Gor when buffed. Now, Ungor raiders are far more expensive than both Gor and Ungor, and lose shields, and lose their spear. So right off the bat, they don't seem like a good sell. However, Ungor raiders do come with bows, which makes them excellent at dealing chip damage. And with their ability to move quickly, they have a very large threat range and can be a pain in the ass to deal with. They are 90 points, which is a tad expensive, but time and time again, I find myself filling my ranks with these buggers. So what can I say? I kind of like them. Now, if you want to bring a solid infantry unit that won't break the bank, then Bestigors are the unit for you. They are toughness 4 base with no shields, and they have minimum damage 2 and crit damage 4 with a nice wound count of 12. They even get 3 attacks, making them very deadly on the offense and hard to kill when buffed with reactions. At only 100 points, Bestigors are very good at what they do. In fact, I find myself filling my list out by upgrading Ungor raiders to Bestigors if I have a few points spare. Bearing in mind, they also have the damaging charge ability and synergize wonderfully with the Beast Lord. And again, they retain movement 5. Bestigors can do just about anything. They are your Swiss army knife of infantry. With all the infantry out the way, now we move on to some of our harder hitters, the big lads. And we're going to start with the Dragon Ogres. Dragon Ogres are very good. Right off the bat, they have movement 6, making them devilishly fast. They can outrun just about anything, and since they're not mounted, despite their appearance, they retain that mobility when traversing terrains. They can even climb ladders. Not only that, they come with a whopping 30 wounds and toughness 4, so they are very difficult to shift. Finally, their weapons are all great. Paired maces gives them 5 attacks with 2-4 damage, which is respectable and is great for spiking with those 10 heavy hits on a double attack turn. The glaive grants 2-inch reach, 4 attacks and 2-5 damage, which is again is excellent. Finally, the crushers. These things only get 3 attacks, but hit at 3-6 damage, which can put a dent in just about anything. Of all the options, the glaive is the most well-rounded and our choice of weapons. However, any weapon works well based on points. The only downside to Dragon Ogres is their strength stat, which caps at 4, and that's even with the crusher weapon equipped. They make up for this with their ranged lightning ability and their ability to heal if a shaggoth is nearby, so they are very well rounded and one of the better elite units in the faction if you support them. One of the most popular units in the Beasts of Chaos list is the Bulgor, and Bulgor are very similar to Dragon Ogres in just about every category. They come with the same wounds and toughness, but lose a point of movement and gain a point in strength. This makes the Bulgor heavy hitting but slower. The trade-off is interesting and it will really boil down to personal preference from a stats perspective. They also have 3 weapon options and these don't quite mirror their Dragon Ogre friends. Firstly, we have the paired axes, which gives them 4 attacks with 2-4 damage. The shield, which drops them down to 3 attacks, but bumps their toughness to a whopping 5, and the Great Axe, which also grants 3 attacks, but hits at that wonderful 3-6 range. Similar to the Bloodkine, we would probably stick to Great Axes or Shields, since toughness 5 on a 30 wound model, who has access to both health and damage mitigation, is very hard to shift, whilst a fighter swinging at 3-6 damage and strength 5 is simply brutal and can take down even the toughest of fighters. Do bear in mind, every weapon a Bulgor can take only has a reach of 1 inch, which is noticeably lower than the Warglaive on the Dragon Ogres, and with the lower speed means their threat range isn't quite as wide as you'd expect from a model this big. And the last of the big dudes is the Sentrygor, and unfortunately, like the Gohoof, the Sentrygor are a little bit naff. Whilst movement 10 is excellent, as is toughness 4, 18 wounds, strength 4, with a 2-inch reach, they are crippled by 1 to 4 damage and a huge cost of 180 points. And they only get 2 attacks. Throw in a lack of ability support and the fact they're mounted, and you've got a unit that just fails to make a good impression. Arguably the most interesting model in the base Beasts of Chaos roster is actually the Cockatrice. It only costs 250 points, which is slightly more than Dragon Ogres and Bulgors. It rocks 30 wounds, toughness 4, and has a fantastic damage profile with 4 attacks, strength 4, 2-5 damage. Throw in movement 10, and this thing can get around, stick around, and do damage. The Cockatrice also comes with Petrifying Gaze, letting you mess with your opponent's movement options, which is excellent against slower factions, letting you remove entire models from the game if you harass them long enough. This is especially good against any models that only move 3 inches, things like Annihilators or any dwarf. That'll reduce their movement to 2. And that means they will never catch your Cockatrice and they will never get into a fight. Cockatrice are excellent in the right list. They fill a bit of a niche, but they fill that niche very well. Now, I said I wasn't going to do monsters, but I thought I would make an exception for the Sentrygor and the Gorgon, as you're both units that are heavily linked to the Beasts of Chaos. In fact, you'll gain one every single time you buy the Start Collecting box. And first on the block is the Sentrygor, and I love the Sentrygor. This thing is amazing and I refuse to believe otherwise. It rolls in at 310 points, which is surprisingly cheap for a monster. It gets 4 strength throw attacks with a 4-8 profile, which isn't bad but not great. It has variable movement, which caps at 6, 50 wounds and toughness 4. This thing is a tough cookie who can swing its fist for some decent damage. Where it shines, however, is in its ability to throw rocks. The Sentrygor is a living catapult, and it has a mechanic whereby it can throw a boulder for a triple. This boulder can hit anything within 15 inches. You basically roll the dice, equal to the value of the ability, and every 4+ deals a whopping 5 damage. If you use this with a 666, you are on average dealing 15 damage to whatever you hit, spiking at 30, which for the record is enough to kill even the most elite of infantry and will almost kill other monsters. This ability is amazing. Now, once you throw that boulder, you can't throw it again, but for a double, you can reload your boulder, allowing you to throw it multiple times if you have enough doubles and triples over the course of the game. This is a bit of a dice sink, but the damage it can do is outstanding, especially early on when you aren't necessarily using your dice for anything else. Then, for a bit of utility, the Sentrygor has access to Soul Eater, which is an amazing AoE damaging nuke that also heals the Sentrygor, which means killing this thing is almost impossible. I cannot get enough of the Sentrygor. Not to be outmatched by its blind brother, the Gorgon is another amazing monster. It comes at 330 points, and you are getting one of the best monsters in Warcry. Again, movement 6, toughness 4, 50 wounds. This time, however, it gains 2-inch reach, 5 attacks, and a whopping 4 to 10 damage on its top bracket. 410. This thing can kill anything it touches, and it does it reliably thanks to a whopping strength 6. This guy can fight everything from chaff to elite infantry, to heroes, to even other monsters, and it could possibly kill all of them in a single round of combat. Ability-wise, it can buff its movement for a double, deal bonus damage on a triple, and on a quad, it can make a bonus move action and then a bonus attack action, increasing its damage output drastically. The Gorgon is well and truly a close combat powerhouse, and nothing else in the faction can match it. It will cost 1/3 of your warband in points, but it is well worth it if you want something this big. So I've already mentioned abilities here and there during this breakdown, but now we're going to dive into them in much more detail, starting with the Beasts of Chaos unique reaction, Brute Resilience. Now, Brute Resilience is a mixed bag. The damage reduction can be outstanding, but you have to consider a few things before popping it and burning AP. Firstly, the unit. Your bigger units do all the heavy lifting in combat. Burning an AP here, for this, means they aren't making as many waves on activation. However, on smaller units, this ability is pure gold and can drastically increase the survivability of your troops. So, any enemy that can do a minimum damage of 2 is immediately shafted by this. Min damage 2 comes at a heavy cost, and if you're spending 1 AP on a super cheap model to remove all that value, well, you're doing something right there. Of course, you might be thinking that anything with damage 1 is basically going to laugh this off because Brute Resilience can't reduce damage below 1, but this isn't exactly true. Looking at the HP values of your units, you are sitting on 8 and 10 HP on your basic chaff. Now, most weapons are critting for 3 to 4 damage, with bigger threats maybe getting that sneaky 5. Now, a crit 3 weapon will kill an Ungor in 3 hits, and a Gor in 4. If you activate Brute Resilience, that's 4 or 5 crits respectively. On a similar note, a crit 4 weapon goes from a 2 to 3 hit kill to a 3 to 4 crit kill. Basically, Brute Resilience helps mitigate dice spikes, and it's very much worth using if you're trying to lock enemies down. Now, something to note, if an enemy has damage 5 critting weapons, then this ability does hold slightly less value for stopping crits. However, depending on the minimum damage, it could still be worth it. It really is on a model by model basis at that point. Reactions aside, let's go on to actual abilities. First things first is Brayherd Ambush, and this is an excellent ability that vanishes after turn 1. You basically want to use this to get your big hitters into range of whatever it is you want early on. This could be chaff, getting into advantageous positions to lock down enemies or take objectives. It can propel your Gors into combat early. It's very powerful in the right scenario, but don't think that you have to use it every single game. There are other doubles worth taking, especially if you're taking things like Sentrygor. Next up we have Blood Gorge, another double, and this can be used on any Bulgor unit. This is Bulgors, Bloodkine, or Doombulls, and it is a great way to keep your expensive elites on the board. You kill something, you heal. It's as simple as that, and for a double, this is really powerful. You can pop this multiple times on multiple units per turn, and you can keep your hard-hitting units around for a ludicrous amount of time. Next up we have our triples, and these are our more powerful abilities, and we have quite a lot of them. First off, we have Petrifying Gaze. Beastmen are very fast and often outrunning other warbands. If you run a Cockatrice, then Petrifying Gaze can be used to make that speed difference even greater. Now, there is some RNG involved, and the range is fairly middling, but dropping a key unit's movement down by 1 is excellent. Again, this is very good against anything with movement 3, such as Stormcast Annihilators, and this will make those kind of units functionally immobile for the rest of the game. It's very good. Next, we have Bestial Charge, which is only usable by Bestigor and Bestigor characters like the Gouge-horn. Bestial Charge is an excellent way of dealing some spike damage if you roll high triples at the right time. There is no RNG involved. All you have to do is get within 1 inch of an enemy and boom, you can deal up to 6 damage. This is a great way to just chip away at things. Great ability. Next up, we have an ability that buffs up Ungor Raiders, and that is Arrow Volley. Ungor Raiders are already a very versatile unit that will likely see a lot of play in Beasts of Chaos. This ability makes their ranged attacks a bit more threatening. Based on your dice, you can be firing 5 arrows for a single AP, which is a very effective way of chipping away at enemies. This is especially good in circumstances where you need to kill something. So let's say something is trying to run away with treasure and you have to kill it. Well then, shooting 5 arrows is a good way of maybe taking off that last little bit of HP, take it down. There's a lot of uses for this ability, but again, you are just firing strength 3, damage 1, 3 arrows here. It's not going to change the world, but in the right scenario, it could still win you the game. And last but not least, we have Bring Down the Storm. Only usable by Dragon Ogres, Bring Down the Storm can be devastating. Coming in with a huge range of 20 inches and hitting on 2+, you just deal dice damage, that's it. This can chip away just about anything and gives Dragon Ogres a serious threat range, in addition to all of the other positives they bring to the table. And now we move on to hero abilities, starting again with our doubles. First things first, we have Rip, Gore and Tear. This is a very nice double that can be used by any hero, and it lets the hero who is landed a kill move or attack again. This is excellent for increasing your damage output or simply leapfrogging chaff units to gain extra movement. This is great on any hero apart from maybe the Shaman. Doom Bulls love this, Shaggoths love this, even Forentas love this ability, and for a double it is very good. Then we get the previously mentioned Devolve, which is only used by Shamans. Devolve is basically the reason you take a Shaman. It allows you to move enemy units. This is massive, as you can move enemy units into your elite units, allowing them to attack on your next activation with all of their AP. It can be used to move enemies off objectives, out of quarters, or even move objectives towards you. It's pretty short ranged, but that's a small price to pay for an ability this good. Next up, we have Grisly Trophies, which is basically the only reason you would take a Beast Lord, because only the Beast Lord can use it. If your Beast Lord kills an enemy, which is easily done if you're attacking chaff, then you can burn this triple to give every single ally within 9 inches +1 attack. The range is nice, the effect is very powerful, and it makes the Beast Lords a very tempting hero. Do bear in mind that Beast Lords do struggle to kill anything tougher than basic infantry, so against the wrong list you will not get this to proc very easily, but against the right list you can pop this every single turn and have massive returns as a result. And the final ability is our quad, which is Empowering Lightning. This can only be used by Shaggoths, and it is practically worthless without a dedicated list. However, if that list is being run, it can be very useful. Respite is a powerful universal ability, but it comes with a few caveats that make it hard to use on a dime. Empowering Lightning has none of those downsides and heals every Dragon Ogre in range up to 6 HP. When it works, it's amazing, but it's often not worth a quad. In conclusion, the Beasts of Chaos are an excellent faction, bringing everything you could ever want to the table. They have cheap units, expensive units, throwaway units, murder machines, and some of the best monsters in the entire game. Their heroes are also top tier, giving you options on top of options. And that's all from me today. This was my first video, so I hope it was alright. If you enjoyed the content, then please drop a like, comment, and a sneaky stub, as it helps a lot. If you want more content like this, then please let me know what you want to see me cover next. I'm looking to cover more areas like battle reports, news, and all that jazz in the future, so keep an eye out for all of that too. If you made it this far, then you're an absolute legend. Until next time, happy raiding.